Mr. Rudd, you were talking just now. This question is for you, but I'd also be interested in Mr. Abbott's thoughts. Mr. Rudd, you're talking about the relatively small size of the tax revenue take in the economy. And indeed, since the last election, the Labor government has revised downwards, has cut on 6 separate occasions its forecast of tax revenue. It's got to the point where the former Treasury Secretary, whom Mr. Abbott cited a minute ago, Ken Henry, has said what we see is a structural change in the ability of the economy to produce tax revenues. Ken Henry has said that any government, any incoming government, whether it's led by you or Mr. Abbott, will be forced into a permanent process, and that's quoting Ken Henry, a permanent process of cutting spending. So my question to you, Mr. Rudd, but also interested in your thoughts, Mr. Abbott, what programs will you cut? And if you're not going to cut any programs, what taxes will you increase?
On the question of tax, I would simply reiterate one point I made before. In a perfect world, you would be able to reduce the company tax rate. But as many others have said recently in response to Mr. Abbott's proposal, that is not the right course of action at this time in the history of our economy. We face a whole bunch of new challenges. I referred to those before in my opening remarks. Therefore, what Mr. Abbott's proposal does is in fact remove 2 significant slices of revenue from the government, and I fear transfers that burden potentially to families in terms of any future change to the goods and services tax.
Mr. Abbott has in mind, but what programs would you cut or what taxes would you increase
well,
so that you don't have to...
On the question of our approach to managing our budget, I've got to say we have produced in full an economic statement only a week or so ago which details our approach both to how we're managing on the tax side and what we're doing as far as expenditure is concerned as well. And this returns the budget to surplus responsibly over time without engaging in massive, major cuts which have a danger of throwing the economy into recession. We will always keep an open mind in terms of how we manage expenditures in the future, but economic wisdom right now lies not in cutting things to the bone, jobs, education, health, because if you do that, not only are those people going to be hurt badly at a time when there's global economic softness, but on top of that, you're going to create real problems down the track in terms of, frankly, keeping the economy going. One other point I'd just add is this. If you're going to talk about growing revenues in the future, what we must do is boost the productivity of our businesses, and that is why we are investing in one of the greatest productivity enhancers in the future for businesses, including small business, and that is broadband to everybody, which we know from studies boosts their overall profitability over time.
Mr. Abbott.
Well, look, on the broadband, on the national broadband network, it's way behind schedule, it's way over budget, and we are absolutely convinced, based on expert advice, that we can produce 5 times present average maximum download speeds for $60 billion less. We can get 25 megabits per second everywhere in Australia by 2016. At the current rate of rollout, the national broadband network won't cover the whole country for 20 years. Now, on, Peter, your fundamental question, yes, revenues are under pressure, no doubt about that. What we need to do is grow a stronger economy. That's why it's so important to reduce unnecessary taxes, eliminate unnecessary taxes like the carbon tax and the mining tax, which have damaged confidence, and reduce red tape. Mr. Rudd talks about productivity, but his last speech at the National Press Club, which talked about productivity, in the end, what did it all add up to? Establishing a committee. There were no specific plans that would actually boost productivity. Well, reducing red tape boosts productivity, restoring the workplace relations pendulum to the sensible centre, that increases productivity, re-establishing the Australian Building and Construction Commission, that increases productivity, and that will give our country the stronger economy that we need if we are to have well-funded education, well-funded health and well-funded disability systems in the years ahead.
Okay, the question was actually what programs are you willing to cut? I don't think we've heard any from either of you, but Tony, but you are willing to cut the school kids bonus still, aren't you?
Look, as we've said all along, this is a cash splash with borrowed money that has nothing to do with education.
Okay.
Now, the letters are already going out, as I understand it, from the Labor Party. Yet another scare campaign from the Labor Party. I am being honest and upfront with people. We can't afford it at this time. What you'll get from Mr Rudd and from the Labor Party, promises made before an election, scrapped after an election. We already had suggestions from one of the panellists tonight, Simon Benson, that the government was looking at abolishing the school kids bonus. It was an article, Simon, you published, I think, on the 26th of July in the Daily Telegraph.
Let's just clear that up. Is that staying?
Well, I think let's just level here about what the alternatives are. We believe that families across Australia are under significant cost of living pressures. One measure we've taken is to increase the childcare rebate from 30 to 50%. Another measure we've taken is to ensure that kids who are at school supporting their families receive a school kids bonus. That's committed. That's in the Ford estimates. It's there and we're already paying it. And that's $410 a year for a primary school kid, $820 a year for a secondary school kid. And that, I believe, helps relieve some of the pressure faced by working families. I go back to the tax and spend question, which was raised by Peter Hartcher before. What I see from Mr Abbott's side of the argument is a series of actions to reduce the taxation burden on big companies and in the mining sector. And I worry about families and where it goes to them, particularly with the GST.
Let's move on.